This painting of Hylas, I showed it to you in one of my previous videos, well, very briefly. Today I start painting the man who loved him. His name is Hercules, and their love story is beautiful. Unfortunately, I cannot say the same about the first stage of an oil painting. It's pretty messy. In oil painting, it's always like this. When you just start with a new painting, you might think, okay, it already looks ugly. I've ruined it all. I made so many mistakes right from the beginning. And it's true, it will look ugly, it will be messy, but to me it's also very exciting because this is when we start putting the composition on canvas and we go into the initial drawing. Yes, I'll tell you if I'm using the grid or not for the initial drawing. Is it the gift from God or just the psychological prison to some artists? And I think I might show you my very secret and my very sophisticated method of comparing screen colors to canvas if you're painting from a reference photo on your computer. This method is about this black rubber glove. No, it's not what you thought. Let me show you before you assume things, okay? Let's make some mess. I have a question. Why do you think we need this initial drawing? Why can't we just start painting without it? Like many artists do, contemporary abstract art is all without the initial drawing, mostly, which is also good, but it's a totally different subject. In our style, classical oil painting, we make this initial drawing because we need the map. We need to know where everything goes. And it's not about making a perfectly detailed drawing to hang on a wall and look at it as a masterpiece, but really to have a map. Where does my head go? Where is the figure? And is there enough air for the figure to breathe? How does the composition feel in this rectangle? That's basically it. I will show you how I do it. I'll explain some things. And the first thing I will tell you, what am I using for the initial drawing? Graphite or paint? With my brush. Well, I have to be honest here. I'm not impartial, and I always use paint for the initial drawing. Well, I used graphite maybe once or twice, and honestly, I didn't like that feeling. It felt kind of plastic, and you might say there are so many advantages of using graphite for the drawing. Yes, of course. One of them is the precision. You can be very precise. If you are into details, then graphite is what you will probably use. And also, it's very adjustable. You can erase, well, erasing lines is not just an advantage, it's also the problem, because you start erasing lines, you will keep erasing them 10, 50 times, and you will keep searching for that perfect line, which does not exist on canvas, to be honest. To me, when I was using graphite for the initial drawing, there were two things that I didn't like really. Well, three things actually. First one, it felt plastic, and the second one, I know myself, I like details, and when I start using graphite, I go instantly into detailing, which I don't need. And the other thing is, to me, it was kind of a huge tension. What's my drawing and where does a painting begin? But when I use paint, it's a slow, continuous process, and my painting already started with the initial drawing because I'm using paint. So I don't need no extra tension when I'm working on canvas. And also, I like graphite, I love charcoal, and I use them for my drawings on paper. When I use graphite on canvas, I'm thinking that I'm drawing, which I'm not. Graphite and charcoal, I love them, I use them, but to me personally, they belong to the world of drawing, not to the world of painting. That's why I draw with paint. The old masters, what did they use? Did they use graphite, paint, or what? They were using sanguine and charcoal, which I also, well, I can imagine using sanguine, yes, because it's very natural and very organic. It has this organic feel. I remember when I was a kid and I was going to this art lyceum, and, well, we did not paint with oils. We did drawing, watercolors, and then acrylic painting. For the acrylic painting, we would prepare the canvas the way I showed you in my previous video. If you didn't watch it, you can watch it here. So it was just canvas, gesso, and then acrylic, imprimatura, and the imprimatura was very dark, something very brownish dark. And for the initial drawing, I remember using a soft pastel pencil, blue. Yeah. So I can imagine using sanguine or pastel for the initial drawing because they have more organic feel to me. But graphite, nothing against graphite. If you're into detail, feel free to use it. It's probably better for you, but just don't go too much into detail because the initial drawing is not your end result, is not your product you're creating, right? Now, let's talk about grids. Do I use them or not? Well, honestly, I used grid only once, I believe, and it was in art college for a very big painting, like huge, multi-figure painting. And well, at the end, I destroyed the painting. I just cut it and tossed it. I didn't like it. But I have experience working with grids. And the main thing that keeps me from doing this is that, to me, it's not really painting. And I want to start painting when I start with the initial drawing. Because I remember comparing the square. Well, let me show you what the grid is. Where is it? Here. The grid is something like this. You make this grid on canvas, and usually it's like 3 by 3 or 5 by 5 centimeters. And you make the same grid on your image in your computer, and then you can put numbers in the squares, and then you just, draw the lines according to the outlines in the grid on your computer, and then you put it on canvas. So pretty easy, very mechanic. Exactly, I think this was my problem, that I felt I'm not creating. I'm laughing about it now, but it's true, because when you're using the grid, you go square A6, square B2, square C3, etc., etc., etc. So you're just copying the squares, you're not drawing. You know what I mean? It's like painting by numbers, which, again, nothing against it. Well, it might be art, yeah. It can be art. It's just different type of art, not my type of art, But mostly I work without it. I go freehand because, from my personal experience, without the grid, it's more about the figure and the composition and the painting itself, and less about the boxes that I have to count and copy. I know that some of you use grids. Some say that grids are cheating. If you ask me what's my position on this, I don't care. Really. It's just a tool, right? But I care about why you're using it. Because, let me give you an example. The old masters, did they use grids? Of course they did. Leonardo, Dürer, Rubens. But what were they doing? What is so different about them using the grid from how we use the grid? They would, first of all, they would make a sketch. Then they would make a bigger sketch on paper, the size of the canvas. They would put the grid on it, and they would copy the sketch they created. They would copy it on canvas. What we do, we just take the photo, we put the grid on it, we number the boxes, and then we count those boxes, those squares. That's very mechanic. That draftsmanship, that's not artistic to me. And before you write an angry comment on this, again, feel free to use the grid, feel free to use graphite, feel free to use whatever. They are just tools. But the most important thing, why are you using those tools? What's the goal? So for this painting, I'm not using the grid. I'm going freehand, and yeah. But if you're using the grid, that's fine. Just don't let the grid become your painting. Yeah, and there's one more thing I kind of forgot to tell you, that when you're using the grid and you're using it constantly, it will be your ritual, it will be your tradition, and you will be trapped in this ritual. You won't be able to work without the grid. That's a prison. Sorry. Yeah, for this painting, freehand. The initial drawing is done, and we will start with the next stage, with the block in of the underpainting. And this is where it gets really messy and ugly, and my students get confused all the time when they watch me paint, because I cover with this mud, as they say, the whole canvas. I don't let the imprimatura show. And I'll tell you why I do it, okay?